It was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. The sky was clear, the sun bathed the gardens in a golden, almost cinematic light, and everything seemed like it came out of a fairy tale. In the center of a property surrounded by white rose, bushes, and blooming arches, Michael Turner, a respected businessman known for his inspiring journey and generous heart, adjusted his tie in front of the mirror, trying to hide his nervousness. "She's going to say yes. It's going to be perfect," he repeated to himself. At 52 years old, Michael believed he had finally found peace next to Claire Whitmore, a sweet, sincere-eyed, calm, smiling visual artist who had rescued him from silent loneliness. She was 15 years younger, but there was no difference between them that love couldn't fill. The wedding would be intimate, but elegant, with few guests and no ostentation. Only love. Only truth. But what he didn't know is that among the guests, someone he had never seen in his life was about to arrive, and that someone carried a secret that could destroy everything. As the soft music played in the background and Claire prepared with her bridesmaids, the atmosphere was light. Cameras captured smiles, details of the dress, the impeccable arrangements, the perfect scene. But outside at the ceremony entrance, a young man with an intense gaze and short breath stopped in front of the security guards. "My name is Ethan. Ethan Collins. I came to see the man getting married today." "Do you have an invitation, sir?" "No, but he'll want to see me, trust me." The security guard hesitated. He looked inside. He looked back at Ethan and allowed him in. Meanwhile, the wedding march began. Claire entered, stunningly beautiful, holding the bouquet with trembling hands. Michael, upon seeing her, felt his heart race as if it were the first time. A tearful smile formed on his face. But then, in the fourth row, to the left of the altar, he saw him, a tall young man, brown hair, tense expression. Their eyes met, and something inexplicable happened. Michael felt as though he were looking into a mirror of the past, as if a forgotten fragment of his own story had taken shape. The world stopped for a second, the sound around him distorted. "Who is that guy?" he whispered, unsure if he was dreaming. Claire, noticing the lost look in her fiancé's eyes, gently squeezed his hand. "Is everything okay?" Michael didn't answer, because deep down something had already broken, and he felt nothing would ever be the same again. He didn't smile, he didn't clap, he didn't seem happy to be there, while everyone around him celebrated the wedding, toasted to love and got emotional with the ceremony. That mysterious young man remained still, watching every gesture of Michael with an unsettling intensity, as if he were analyzing, judging, waiting. His name? It was still a mystery, but something in his eyes screamed, "I didn't come here by chance." Michael tried to ignore it. He tried to smile, hold Claire's hand, focus on the celebrant's words, but the presence of that young man pulsed in his mind like an invisible siren. Who was he? And why did he seem so familiar? After the vows, after the kiss, after the applause and the quiet fireworks, came the reception. Live music, laughter, glasses clinking, and then he approached. He wore a simple yet neat shirt. He wasn't just any intruder, he had presence, but his gaze was a storm. He walked up to Michael with firm steps, but his heart raced. He stopped a few feet away and without ceremony said in a strained voice, "Sorry to show up like this. I know it's your big day, but I needed to be here." Michael furrowed his brow. "You are?" Ethan Collins. "I came because I needed to see you with my own eyes." Silence. Michael stared at him, trying to understand, but what came next made the ground disappear beneath his feet. "I'm your son, Michael. Your son. And you never knew about it." Time stopped. Literally, Claire, who was just a few steps away, heard. She turned pale. The nearby guests looked shocked. The cameras, still on, recorded everything. Michael stood frozen, his eyes wide, his face drained of color. This can't be true," he whispered. Ethan took an old yellowed letter out of his pocket. "My mother wrote this to you, but you never replied." Michael took the letter with trembling hands, and when he read the sender's name, Rachel Collins, everything came back like a lightning strike. A summer, a business trip to Seattle, a brief romance, a quick goodbye, and a mistake that now came to claim its price. Ethan didn't wait for a response. "I didn't come here to ask you for anything. I just needed to look you in the face, to know if you were really the good man everyone talks about. Because to me, you were just a name, an empty space, a silence." And then he turned his back and disappeared among the guests, leaving Michael standing, stunned, with teary eyes, holding that letter as if it weighed a ton. Claire approached, devastated. "Michael, is this true?" He paused, but shook his head. I don't know. But if it is, I just met my son. On the day of my wedding." The letter still trembled in Michael's hands. The words, written by hand by Rachel Collins with her soft and delicate handwriting, seemed to scream now. "Michael, if you ever receive this letter, I want you to know that you have a son. I didn't look for you before because I thought it was best, but he deserves to know who his father is, even if he never meets you." That piece of aged paper shattered everything Michael thought he knew about his own life. Claire was silent, motionless beside him, as if the world had stopped at the exact moment of the revelation. The dream wedding had turned into a nightmare in front of everyone. That night, there was no waltz, no speeches. The guests left early, embarrassed. The happiness that had hovered over the couple dissipated into the air like smoke. Hours later, in the hotel room reserved for the wedding night, Claire sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. "Why didn't you tell me about her?" "Because I swear, I didn't know. I never received that letter. Never, Claire. Rachel disappeared from my life without explanations. It was a brief romance, in a confusing time. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. But her silence hurt more than any accusation. And now, what are you going to do?" Michael took a deep breath, still in shock. "I need to talk to him. I need to know if it's true. If he really is my son." The next morning, Michael went to the address Ethan had left on the back of the letter, a simple neighborhood, a modest house. And there he was, the young man who, suddenly, carried half of his blood and all the anger of years in silence. Ethan opened the door with a cold expression. "What are you here for? To apologize for not being there when I needed you? I've heard that from other men before." Michael swallowed hard. "I didn't come to justify myself. I came to meet you, to understand what happened, and, if you allow me, to be part of your life." But the response was quick and sharp. "You want to come in now, after 25 years? Sorry, Michael, life doesn't wait for anyone." And then Ethan dropped the bomb. "My mother died 2 months ago, from cancer, alone, without you." The words hit like knives. Michael stood silent, his eyes filled with tears. "She died, not knowing if you would ever respond. She gave me this letter at the hospital with her hand trembling. She asked me to try, at least give you the chance to know. But to me, you're just a successful stranger with a nice house and a perfect wife." Michael didn't know what to say, but before leaving he left something on the table, an old photo of him with Rachel and an envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter. To Ethan. But what no one knew was that this reunion was still just the beginning, because in Rachel's old files, there was more. Much more. And a truth hidden for over 2 decades was about to explode. A truth that could change everyone's fate. Ethan didn't open the envelope that night. He stared at it for hours, sitting in the same chair where his mother used to read in silence before the illness. Michael's words echoed in his mind, mixed with childhood memories that had no answers and questions he had learned to bury. On the other side of the city, Michael couldn't sleep. Claire was turned to the other side of the bed, and the void between them had never seemed so vast. The next morning, Claire spoke bluntly. "You need to resolve this, not just for him, for us." Michael nodded, but there was something else burning inside, an old feeling, a new guilt, and a wound he didn't even know existed. Now open and bleeding. Hours later, Ethan finally broke the seal on the envelope. It was a letter written by Michael, simple, sincere, brutally honest. "Ethan, I was not the father you deserved, but I want to be the man you need now. If you'll allow me, I want to rebuild with you every part of what we lost, and if it's too late, at least I want you to know that you were not forgotten. You were stolen, from me, and I didn't even realize it. Forgive me. Michael." Ethan didn't cry, but he stood still, staring at the paper until his fingers began to tremble. That same day, Michael went to visit an old friend, Peter Holloway, a retired lawyer and former colleague of Rachel Collins. "Peter, I need to know the truth. Did Rachel try to reach me? Did you know anything?" Peter hesitated, visibly shaken. "Michael, I think it's time you know everything. Rachel didn't abandon you. She was prevented." Michael's eyes widened. "What?" "She tried to contact you several times, but someone intercepted it. The revelation hit like a bomb. Who? I'm not sure. But there was another woman in your office back then. Someone who had an interest in keeping you away from Rachel. Someone close to you. Very close." Michael paled. "No, it can't be." But before Peter could respond, an old envelope was pulled from a drawer. Inside there was proof. 3 letters addressed to Michael, all returned, all with the same note. Recipient absent, returned to sender. But there was a shocking detail. The handwriting on the return label was not from the Postal Service. It was familiar, painfully familiar. Michael recognized it immediately. It was the handwriting of his late mother, and the ground simply disappeared. Rachel hadn't left. She had been silenced, blocked, erased from Michael's life by someone he trusted most, his own mother. And at that moment, everything changed. Michael understood why he had never known about Ethan. He understood why Rachel disappeared. And for the first time, he felt an anger that didn't fit in his chest, but the worst was yet to come. That same night, Ethan called. "Michael, can we talk? There's something you need to know. About my mother. About you." Michael replied, his voice trembling. "I have something to tell you too, son." 2 worlds once distant were about to collide for good, and from the midst of the open wounds would come the revelation no one expected. The clock read 7:12 p.m. when Ethan arrived at Michael's apartment. For the first time, father and son were face to face. No walls, no masks. Claire opened the door and stared at them for a second that seemed eternal. Then she simply said, "I'll leave you alone," and left, taking with her the heavy silence of the room. Michael offered coffee. Ethan declined. "I just need you to listen, and in the end, if you want me to leave forever, I will." Michael nodded, his eyes welling up. Ethan took a deep breath. "My mother, before she died, she told me everything. About you. About how she tried to write to you. About how someone stopped the letters from reaching you. And about the reason she gave up trying." Michael clenched his fists, struggling against his emotions. "I know. I found out yesterday. It was my mother. She intercepted the letters. She stole me from you." Ethan hesitated. "Rachel said your mother came to her in person. She threatened her, told her that if she showed up again, she would ruin her life, and the life of the son she was carrying." Michael lowered his head. "My God." The silence became a knot in both their throats. And then came the hardest part. Ethan took a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "This is my mother's death certificate, but the father's name, she left it blank. Until the end, she didn't want to implicate you, but she left a condition in her will, that I would find you, that I would at least look you in the eyes, and choose." Michael looked at him, confused. "Choose what?" Ethan swallowed hard. "If I wanted you to be part of my life, or if I would move on. Alone." It was the decision Ethan had feared since the day he found the hidden letter, and now it was there, hanging in the air, weighing on both of them like a mountain. Michael stood up. He paced back and forth. "Ethan, I can't change the past, but I would give anything to change the future. I lost 25 years, and I don't want to lose another single day." Ethan's eyes filled with tears, but he still hesitated. "Are you willing to face what comes with it? The media? The judgments? The scandal? Because I've looked into you. You have a public image, a company, a name. And I am just the bastard son who showed up at your wedding." Michael stepped closer and with a firm voice replied, "You are my son, no matter what they say. And if I have to shout that to the world, I will." And then Ethan said something unexpected. "Then prove it. Come out publicly. Say who I am, today. Now." Michael froze. It was the hardest decision of his life. If he did it, he would face the scandal, the shareholders, the press, Claire. But if he didn't, he would lose Ethan. Again. He looked at his phone, opened the company's video app, and started recording. Good evening. My name is Michael Reed, and today, before any meetings, before any business announcements, I need to speak as a man, as a father. This here beside me is Ethan Collins, my son. And from today on, I will no longer live hiding a truth that should never have been buried. Ethan looked at him incredulous, but a tear slid down his cheek. He finally believed. But while thousands watched the confession go viral, a notification appeared on Ethan's phone. Subject: documents about your true origins, urgent. Sender: his mother's lawyer, and the subject of the message froze his heart. Ethan, maybe Michael isn't your real father. The notification was still trembling on Ethan's phone screen when he abruptly stood up, his heart racing. Michael, still emotional after his public declaration, noticed the change in his son's face. What happened? I got an email from my mother's lawyer. And what does it say? It says that maybe you're not my father. The silence that followed was devastating. Michael stood still, as if someone had ripped the ground from beneath his feet. This doesn't make sense. Your mother told me. She never told you everything, Michael, and apparently she carried secrets until the end. Without saying anything more, Ethan left. He needed air, space, time. But time at that moment was the one thing he had the least of. 2 hours later, he was sitting in Rachel's lawyer's office, Mr. Wallace, a graying, methodical man who seemed to carry the weight of decades of confidences. He opened a weathered leather folder and pushed a document toward Ethan. This is your mother's complete will. The part you never read. Ethan skimmed through the lines until he found the underlined passage. If one day my son discovers Michael Reed, he has the right to know about Jonathan Cole as well. Ethan furrowed his brow. Who is Jonathan Cole? Wallace took a deep breath. Rachel met Jonathan before you were born. They had a brief involvement, while she believed Michael had abandoned her. Ethan fell silent. She was never sure. She never wanted to do the test. That's why she chose to raise you alone, to protect you and keep that part buried. But then, Wallace placed a dark wooden box on the table. She left this with clear instructions, to be delivered only if you wanted to know the truth. Ethan hesitated. He knew that by opening this box, nothing would ever be the same again. Inside, there were two things: a sealed envelope with the word, results, an old photograph of Rachel, hugging a tall, smiling man, Jonathan Cole, and next to the photo, a small handwritten note. Forgive me, Ethan. Sometimes the pain of the past makes us hide even what matters most. But now the choice is yours. With love, your mother. Ethan opened the envelope with trembling hands. Paternity test. Comparison between Ethan Collins and Michael Reed. Result: incompatible. His heart stopped for a second. Michael wasn't his father. The public confession, the tears, the effort, and now, all of it came with a new and painful truth. But before he could process it, Wallace added, but there's more. The man in the photo, Jonathan Cole, is also dead. He passed away 3 years ago, but he left something. He pulled out another envelope. A letter to the son he never knew. Ethan didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or scream. In just 48 hours, he had discovered he had a father, then he didn't. And now, he had another father he never met. He opened the letter. Ethan, if you ever read this, it's because your mother had the courage to open the doors to the past. I was wrong. I was a coward. I ran from everything. But not a single day passed that I didn't think about you. If there's still time, look for my sister Margaret. She may tell you who I really was, and maybe who you are too. With regret, Jonathan. Ethan leaned his head against the wall. Everything he knew as truth had disappeared. But even with the world collapsing, one certainty grew inside him. He needed to tell Michael, even if it broke both their hearts. That night, Ethan returned to Michael's apartment. Their eyes met. Like two men destroyed by a past they didn't choose. And then, Ethan simply said, "You're not my father, Michael. But maybe, you're the only father I truly have." And Michael cried, like a man who had lost everything and found something much greater. The morning was gray when Ethan arrived at the small wooden house in Vermont. The place seemed forgotten by time, surrounded by tall trees and a stillness that seemed to hide secrets. He hesitated in front of the door. On the other side was Margaret, Cole, the only living connection to his biological father. He knocked. The door slowly creaked open, revealing a woman with white hair tied in a simple bun. Her eyes were the same as the ones in Jonathan's photo, and now they were his too. "You are?" "I'm Ethan, Rachel's son, and from what I've discovered, Jonathan's." Margaret remained silent for a few seconds. Then, her eyes filled with tears. "I've been waiting for you. For 27 years. She invited him inside. The room was cozy, filled with old photographs, books, and a hand-painted picture, with a dedication. "For my sister, the guardian of truth. Jonathan wanted you more than anything. But what happened? Destroyed him." Ethan furrowed his brow. "What happened?" Margaret looked at him with sorrow. "You need to know what your mother and my brother did for you." She took a yellowed letter from an old chest, written by Rachel. Margaret began to read, her voice choked. "Margaret, if Ethan ever comes to you, it's because the truth has finally found the courage. He will never know how much he was loved, or how many lives were destroyed to protect him. Jonathan didn't tell you everything. He took the blame to save me, but I was the one responsible. I was the one who gave the documents to the police about his boss. I was the one who exposed the corruption involving a dangerous senator. When they found out, they threatened to kill Jonathan. He ran to protect me and our son." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Margaret continued with a trembling voice. "Jonathan became the target of a criminal network. He lost everything. He lived in hiding. Because he loved you. Because he loved Rachel. And the worst part is that he came back years later, ready to tell the truth. But Rachel asked him not to appear. She said the pain of an absence was better than living in fear." Ethan stood up, shaken. "So all of this was a sacrifice? He disappeared. To save me?" "Yes, and Rachel lived with that guilt until the last day." Margaret handed Ethan one last box. Inside, there was a ring. A ring Rachel had given to Jonathan when they knew they were going to be parents. "He asked me to keep this until his son was ready." Ethan held the ring in his hands as if carrying the weight of an entire life. Tears streamed silently, but Margaret still had something to say. "There's one more thing, Ethan. Something you need to know before you leave." She pulled out a folder. An envelope marked with a judicial seal. "Jonathan left this before he died, and it could only be delivered if you found it." She placed the papers in Ethan's hands. It was a legal donation of property. A will. "The inheritance I leave is symbolic. But it's all I have. A cabin in the mountains. A painting. And the words I never had the courage to say. The true inheritance, Ethan, is the reason I disappeared. It's the love I had for you before I even knew you. And the sacrifice I made so you could live in peace." Ethan fell to his knees. Everything he had judged as abandonment, coldness, omission, now had a new name. Sacrifice. Jonathan hadn't abandoned him. He had protected him. Rachel hadn't deceived him. She had loved him in the only way she knew, hiding the pain so that he would never have to carry it. Ethan returned to Margaret's house, looked up at the sky, and for the first time, said aloud, "Thank you, Father and Mother. I understand you now." The ceremony was already over. The reception for Michael and Olivia's wedding was in full swing, with guests smiling, soft music playing, and champagne being served. But Ethan, standing at the edge of the dance floor, felt as though the world was in slow motion. He held Jonathan's ring in his pocket, the same ring his father had wanted to give him when everything was still possible. Now, all that remained was emptiness and a decision. It was then that Michael, his newly discovered brother, approached with misty eyes. "Man, I don't even know where to start. This is crazy. But if there's one thing I felt in that hug, it's that we're of the same flesh." Ethan looked at him with a sincere smile. "Life took away a father, but it gave us each other." They embraced. Strongly. For real. Like brothers who, even though they hadn't shared a childhood together, now shared the same fragmented past. But fate still had one final card to play. Olivia, the bride, stepped onto the stage and asked for silence. Before we open the dance floor, I'd like to make a special thank you to Ethan for having the courage to come here, share his story, and, in some way, bring this family together. Everyone applauded. Ethan was moved. But then, an elderly man entered through the front door, staggering, supported by a cane. His face was covered with wrinkles and weariness, but his eyes were unmistakable. The room fell silent. Ethan turned. The air left him. It can't be. It was Jonathan, alive. Margaret was holding him by the arm, helping him walk to the center of the room. People parted in absolute silence. Jonathan stopped in front of Ethan, his eyes filled with tears. "Son." Ethan, stunned, felt his heart beat in his chest like a war drum. "But you died. Margaret told me that." Margaret stepped forward, panting. "He had a stroke 2 years ago. He was in a coma. When he woke up, he lost part of his memory. It's only in the last few months that the memories started coming back. This morning he woke up, looked at me and said, 'My son is coming. I need to see him.'" Ethan dropped to his knees. Jonathan, though weak, knelt with difficulty. Before him, he touched his son's face with trembling hands. "Forgive me for being away for so long. I fought. I was a coward at times, but I never stopped loving you. You were my world. You always have been." Ethan cried like a child. In that moment, time froze. All the wounds, all the silences, all the questions had dissolved in that embrace. The entire room stood up. Many were crying. Others were holding their breath. It was as if a miracle had just occurred. Michael, standing beside Olivia, watched everything with tear-filled eyes. Life really is like a soap opera, huh? But there was still one last revelation. Jonathan, now seated, asked everyone to listen one last time. "Before everything collapsed, I recorded a tape. It was for the case that something happened to me. Margaret kept this tape, and I think now is the time to listen to it." A small recorder was placed on the microphone. Jonathan's young voice filled the room. "Son, if you ever hear this, it means I didn't make it back in time. You need to know. Your mother was a hero. She sacrificed herself to protect the truth. But there's more. You weren't born by chance. You were born on a night when Rachel and I made a promise. No matter what happened, we would protect you with our own lives, and that's what I'm doing now. If you're hearing this, know that I loved you before I even knew you. And even if I go, I'll always be with you." Silence. Then, applause. A lot of applause. Ethan looked around. His father was alive. His brother accepted him. His story, as painful as it had been, was now whole. But the true plot twist was what Ethan realized in that moment. Everything he thought he had lost had been waiting for him all along. The pain, the absence, the voids, none of it was in vain. Each step had led him back home. And that night, to the sound of music, embraced by Jonathan and Michael, Ethan smiled like never before. Because finally, he was no longer a lost son. He was part of a family. Wow. If you were moved by this story, just imagine what's still to come. I need to know, what moment touched your heart the most in this story? Leave your comment below and share this with someone who needs to see this right now. But before you go, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more twist-filled stories that will leave you breathless. Hit the bell to be the first to know when we release the next chapter, because you won't want to miss what's coming. And remember, if you thought this story was emotional, just wait to see the more stories coming your way. Your opinion is really important to us, and together we'll build a community full of impactful stories. See you in the next video.